crap. Good afternoon, friends. I'd like to welcome you today to What's in Tegan's Storage Locker. It's the show that dares to ask the question, just what is in my storage locker? The answer today, as every day, is comic books. I grab a fistful of comic books from some number of storage-related facilities and flip through them here on the camera for your enjoyment. Basically, if you like hearing me talk for more or less an hour and fight with my cat alternately, well, that's what we're here to do. All right, so let's start off with an issue of Generation X from early 1997. This is, I think, at or towards the end of Chris Bachalo's tenure on this book. He stayed with the book for I want to say, over 2 years. I don't know how long over 2 years. And pretty much the whole run is good. I'm not going to argue necessarily. I'd have to go back and read it. I remember it being rather of an anticlimax when it actually got around to doing anything. It looked very nice, but it almost seemed as if people's expectations rather ran ahead of themselves on Generation X. I've always thought they wrote a lot of checks with that Generation X preview special that I absorbed, read every single page of that thing, and then the book came out, and it was different. You can sort of see how that was a blueprint that sort of got out of hand when it got into the wild. So the book itself was actually could be kind of downbeat in terms of very weird storytelling rhythms built around Chris Bachalo's art. Is it Bachalo or Bachalo? I've heard it both ways. So the story here is that Jubilee is being held prisoner by Bastion. He was the big bad in this era of X-Men books. Still shows up once in a blue moon, I think. Basically just one of the final iterations of the Nimrod, a sentinel in the form of a human being who basically could be a politician, and that was sort of his where he was dangerous. So she's hooked up to this, and there's Cyclops' broken visor, because he was one of the first they took, I think. Oh, this game. I had a few of these, but I never knew how to play. So she's basically just being, tortured, brainwashed, trying to get something out of her, trying to just break her spirit. And here's Bastion looking like he should be playing bass in a new metal band. Like, just, he got the look. You just see him on stage there. Oh, wow. A man screaming. Was this towards the end of the Sega Saturn's product life? They're doing buy two, get one free on the games from the Sega store. Is that a good sign? Liquidation sales? Man, but just look at this art. I'm not even... So he's doing some... Is this a telepathic thing? Oh, they're looking at her thoughts? Something along those lines. So... Here's back at the Massachusetts Academy, which is where Gen X lived. And this would, I think, be the other half of the artistic equation here, which is not just Chris Bachalo. Pop Man draws part of it as well. Very similar, definitely an artist who came up in the wake of Bachalo, in the wake of Ashley Wood as well. He did a run on Ghost Rider, which was very controversial, but very interesting. People loathed it, which tells you that it was onto something. It was not a book people had had soft opinions about. Those are often the most interesting ones in hindsight. So, knocking over dog food bowl. Oh, they're trying to feed her dog food, I guess. So yeah, she's just being tortured. And weird memories, like, oh, here's Bachalo trying to draw a little bit like Willis Portacio there. Oh, is that Pop Man? No, I think that's Bachalo. See, kind of complementary styles. Oh, that's nice looking. Because they had him hooked up and tortured, I think, at the time. I want to say, my dim memory of Operation Zero Tolerance was that it started with them picking off the heavy hitters. Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, the core X-Men were taken immediately. I'm telling you the plot of Operation Zero Tolerance. I'm sorry. But the odd thing about this story was that the people who had to save the day were the ones who were a little bit on the periphery. It was Iceman saving the day. He was the guy with the play at the end. Look, this is just very nice. Very nice. Is this out of some... Looks like... Maybe it's because I've just seen a lot of anime and manga with similar stuff to this. I guess Chris Bachalo had too. There's that influence peeking in. It really jumps out now. At the time, he had just done a long run at Vertigo. That's where he made his name, Bachalo. Oh, Soul Blade. That's an interesting aesthetic. That's something else. Beautiful looking comic. I mean, it's basically just Jubilee being tortured by this dude who looks like I say, he's a musician. The musician looking fellow. And so I showed him. He just broke her nose. So yeah, that was basically the size of it. Oh, and here's a Jim Mahfood. I don't remember paying attention to this at all. It does. Wow, he was working with, he was doing, yeah, he was. He did that special, that's right. Interesting. That's just an interesting connection. Jim Mahfood, they reached out to him to do, don't know how that happened. There's probably a story there. Rallycross. Well, yeah, this is actually part of a storyline we looked at the other day on the channel where the Kingpin showed up in the X-Men for a while. And he hadn't been around since Daredevil 300. So... here's just some, they're talking about letters and how awesome it is to get letters. Marvel Online, www.marvelonline.com. Editorial profile, Matt Idelson. Anyway, I don't remember them doing these editorial profiles that often in this period. I always enjoyed the editorial profiles. Well, in the late 80s and the early 90s, they had a real group of characters working in their office. They don't quite have so many characters working for them, and I think maybe they lose something there. Let's see, what was happening the same month? Oh, Thunderbolts #2. Oh, yeah. Operation Zero Tolerance was Marvel's big cross-programming for the first few months of Heroes Reborn. That was their X-Men crossover to go toe-to-toe with, the new Captain America and Avengers books. And in hindsight, the ones that were putting out, Marvel was stuck trying to put out better books. So that's when you got Thunderbolts #2. Mike Deodato and Peter David on the Hulk. Hulk was weird. Hulk got kind of dark in that period. The Hulk was dying for that whole year. It's a very haunted period of the book. Oh, here's the same month as that Leonardo Manco issue of What If, where Doctor Doom fights Black Knight in Camelot. Did a video about that on the TikTok. Oh, and they're still doing their Star Trek books. They did their Star Trek books for a couple years. And the Spider-Man Cyber comic was still running. Do you know that they don't have these? Marvel, and I've talked to people who've worked in the handbooks, Marvel does not have the files for these. So if you have them, let someone like in Marvel editorial know, because they don't have copies for their own use internally. That just goes to show you how ephemeral so much online stuff is. Even stuff Marvel put online in the late 90s is gone. Sean King, I don't think it's Sean King, huh? Keith Olschlager, huh? All right, so, oh, there's my girl. Go check out my podcast with Claire Napier, Udder Madness. We talk about this woman right here, Witchblade, Sarah Pizzini, who is awesome, and if you don't know about her, you can come and learn about her with us. Udder Madness, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Patreon. We're everywhere you want to be. And what was I saying? What are they? They're Hawk and the Heroes Were Born one half. The Wizard had. It was $10. They were doing a big Top Cow Marvel crossover, which I didn't read at the time because I wasn't really that into Top Cow at the time. I read Witchblade some. I read The Darkness some. I'm getting into it a lot more now. And I actually just got this not that long ago. I have yet to sit down and read the whole thing. We're probably going to do a whole show about that one. Because there was a Witchblade Silver Surfer team up. Wolverine Witchblade, not one where they get married. They have a couple crossovers and they get married in one of them because Chris Claremont was involved, and that's just what he wanted to do that day when he woke up. And because it's Chris Claremont, they said, yes, sir. Oh, and this was Amalgam, the first Amalgam month, which came out of the Marvel versus DC Challengers of the Fantastic. That was Challengers of the Unknown and the Fantastic Four. Iron Lantern #1. One of the, if you're going to pick out any of these in the quarter boxes, if you only ever see this one, this has got Paul Smith art with Kurt Busiek writing. And they were all good. They did one that was a mashup of the Western characters and Generation X. They just had fun with that one. Here's some Adam Polina's work from X-Force, which was very interesting at the time. I quite liked. There's a reason why I still bought X-Force. It was actually a pretty decent book. Interesting art through the 90s. Monthly by John Francis Moore, Adam Paulina, Mark Marla, Paulina. I don't know, I just liked it. He drew some nice looking comic books. And these crazy, I think I had a couple, I want to say I had a couple of these. It annoyed me that they would do cool toys where there was only one in the line that looked like the comic book. Like it was a fairly comic accurate Bane, and I maybe would have wanted to find that on the peg, but I wouldn't have wanted like all these weird like neon Batman whatever. No one liked these. No one liked them. Interesting looking Scarecrow though. They never quite did the Scarecrow with a soul patch. Is that a soul patch? It looks like a soul patch. Cool borders. Shred the learning curve, dude. Here's a weird one for you. Here's an issue of Spawn you probably haven't seen. This was the comic book, the original comic book that shipped with the first clown action figure. And you see on the front of the cover it says, warning contains small parts which may present a choking hazard to children under 3. There you go. Todd Toys, ages 4 and up. Although, do not buy that toy for a 4-year-old, please. I beg you. They weren't ready to learn about the clown. No one was ready to learn about the clown. The Clown, created by Todd McFarlane. So, story by Eldon Asp. I have no clue if that, possibly a pseudonym. Pencils by Flint Henry. Inks by Flint Henry with Troy Hubbs. Lois Buhalis. I recognize that name. Did some DC work, I want to say. So you see, this is a real issue of Spawn with the Image logo and everything. It just comes under the Todd Toys auspices. And see, this is kind of an interesting looking comic book. It's weird. It's not like Todd McFarlane at all. You know, it's not someone who's trying to ape that style. And yet you can see this is the perfect type of comic book to put in the toy, in with the toy for the clown. Just kind of a ugly looking. I mean, it's purposefully ugly. This is one of the least appealing characters in the history of comics. There's Al Simmons, big-time war hero, killed a lot of people. And then, oh wow, yeah, see, this is maybe Al Simmons being betrayed by Chapel, getting his head blown off by the guy with the skull tattooed on his face. Maybe that's a bit too intense for a 4-year-old. Look, I'm just saying. There's a point where maybe the parents need to be a part of that conversation. Well, that's a first. I don't even know what I was talking about. Someone rather came and inserted himself into my attention. My goodness, did you see that? You know, if that had been one of the old CRT monitors, it had been popped. It would have made a big bang. As it is, it just made a thump. Ugh. I record these in the middle of the night. You're going to get me evicted. I've been saying that since I moved in. He's a little hellraiser. He's going to bring the house down around all of our ears. So this is his gimmick, the clown. If you don't know, he transforms into the guy, the Violator. It's, you know, basically just his human alter ego. And it's, you know, he's a nasty demon from hell, so he's just the most disgusting human being possible. I actually read the Violator series on the TikTok and Instagram, and that video compiling those reviews is the most popular video on this channel. So people love this guy. People love him. He's disgusting, but he's a really imaginative monster. You have to give him that. And this is just very interesting work here. You know, for a book that didn't have to take any chances, this is kind of far out, I have to admit. I wonder if this has ever been reprinted anywhere. Following is the 3-page preview of Tremor. For the complete story, check out the comic book. Now, Tremor, I have to say, that's when the fix was in for me in terms of realizing that he was starting to create characters because he wanted to make action figures of them. Because if I recall correctly, this guy got his toy announced before he was featured in the comic, I want to say. Either him or another guy. But it was, the writing was on the wall that was sort of going to be part of the package. And, you know, to be fair, there have been proven worse business models over the years. Let's just, you know, have a comic book to sell stories for this guy who I'm going to also sell action figures for. Gotta admit, there are worse ways to make an honest living. So, Spawn, the comic book, available at all comic shops, only from Image Comics. Now, you'll notice they do something here that they would never do in a comic book. They were actually given to real readers. They split a 2-page spread across 2 pages. It's, you know, for a bonus preview in a toy comic, you know, who's going to be taking that complaint? And this is the first generation of Spawn toys. The Tremor, that's the dude that we just saw, who I don't think he appeared before then, because this guy, Overkill, he was in the first handful of bad guys alongside Violator and, well, I guess Anti-Spawn would have been next. Yeah, he has a fair amount of people in his rogues gallery. They don't really, none of them really have any reasons to do what they do. They're just, they fight Spawn. Medieval Spawn, of course, that's a sharp-looking toy. That is, without a doubt, the sharpest looking of this first batch here. The clown toy was just weird looking. I mean, what do you expect from that character? And the Violator was awesome, except he was made as a bendy guy, and the wires in his arms bent after like a couple months. So he just couldn't move his arms. And here's the Spawnmobile, which was a real thing. It toured the country. The Spawnmobile toured the country. You should go online and check. It happened. I didn't go, but I've spoken to people who did. The Violator monster rig. I do not believe that was a real thing. It'd be awesome if that were in the comics. Spawn Alley, because Spawn actually did live in an alley. That was kind of his whole thing for decades. He may still be living in an alley for all I know. All right. Well, how about an issue of Catwoman? This is from later in the Jim Balent run. We looked, a couple episodes ago, we looked at Catwoman Year 1 that he drew, the annual. And he was still drawing the book up till 99, so he still, I think, had a little bit on the book before it was just completely given a ship-to-stern makeover. Because, as I said at the time, this vision of the character was really dominant, very popular. And even after it got a little bit less popular, it had been popular enough that they needed to make a big departure. And this is, I think, the reason I probably would have been buying it at the time, other than they were selling it at the gas station, was Devin Grayson. And I remember liking the first few years of comics that she did as well. Who's inking? Alquiza? I don't know that name. So, well, here's organized crime dudes doing something. Selena Kyle isn't just some little chippy aspiring to corporate rating and politics. You don't have to tell me, Carlino, she stole my company. Well, of course. She's Catwoman. That's what she does. She steals things. So, oh, they got the trickster. So that's the gimmick here. That's the dude on the cover. The trickster, he's one of the Flash's guys. And the Flash, actually, his rogues don't mix with Batman very often. They just don't. There's never even been a really good Batman versus the rogues story that you can point to, which you think is just a gimme. At some point, someone was going to do just a classic Flash Rogues Gallery versus Batman. No one's ever done it. There's my pitch, DC. Boom. There you go. Anyway. So, Jim Balent with Marlo Alquiza as inker, Roberta Tews as colorist, Albert de Guzman, running into his name a lot lately. I think he did a fair amount of work for the Batman books at the time. So, yeah, you know, now that you really stop to look, you see, Jim Balent really does have impeccable storytelling instincts. Look at this. Look at how this reads. Boom. It's a page with a fair amount of captions on it, but it reads so well, takes your eye where it needs to go, directs you towards the word balloons there. And it reads so well. You have to admit, it reads perfect. And there's our guy, there's Trickster. So he shows up. And yeah, I don't think there's much. I think Catwoman could probably win in a fight between the trickster. Maybe he'll be silly enough to try. But more or less, she's got her arms crossed looking at him because she knows he's poaching on her territory. Stars and Stripes. I like that book. I like that character at the beginning because I liked the JSA. It took me a while to sour on the Jeff Johns JSA. First few years were pretty decent. And this was a spin-off of that. Or actually, it was a spin-off of Starman. Special issue number 0, guest starring Starman. Weird to think JSA only got started as a Starman spin-off. And then Robinson left after 3 issues, and the rest is history. But yeah, this is for, 2 pages where people, interesting people with lots of facial expressions, but nevertheless, 2 regular people sit around and have a conversation and think about it, think about things they're talking about, and obviously she's figuring out whether or not she can trust him about what he's saying, or I'm sure he's proposing to share. Oh, and he thinks he's trying to trick her. And I'm sure she thinks she's trying to trick him because that's what you do when you have 2 criminals in a comic book. But just look at this. Look at how nice this page is. My goodness. Jim Balent. Maybe that man needs some flowers. Because this reads really well, I have to say. Going back to look, especially like this is 99. He'd been working pretty much monthly, nonstop, including special projects, for a decade at this time. He knew how to draw. I mean, it's still, maybe looks a bit wonky. But he knows how to tell your eye where it needs to go. And that is the most important skill for any comic book artist. If you can tell your reader what their eyes are supposed to see, that's 2/3 of the job right there. You may think that's utilitarian perspective. I can't think of any cartoonist in the world who wouldn't agree with it. At its base, that's what you're doing, is you're putting someone's eyes where you want them to go in order to tell a story. And there's so many different ways of doing that. But he's also doing really well with his eye contact. Eye contact between characters, something we barely even notice. And yet, also, ineradicably directs our eyes. We want to look and see what is in the line of sight. Other people's eyes draw our attention, naturally. It's a nice transition. I don't even know. Oh, shoes. Airwalker's shoes. This is an odd one. I may pull this one out for the TikTok at some point, because this was latter-day Steve Gerber working with M.D. Bright. Kind of an interesting story that I honestly don't remember whether it works or well or not, but it was Steve Gerber, so I got it. So maybe interesting to look back at it. He just did a story about Bizarro, but not the Bizarro. He was just a Bizarro version of a normal human being, and that was the premise there. So it was very much a Steve Gerber premise. All right, so is she in charge of a corporation at this point? It kind of looks like it. That sort of towards the beginning of, this volume of Catwoman, the first, 5 years or so, were very much her just wandering around having adventures. There's a little bit of a Tomb Raider in it, gallivanting, globetrotting, capers, stuff like that. So you see here with, Grayson writing, they're moving in the direction that they would go in later on and, in the next couple of decades, basically figuring out what other type of roles that they can fit this character into. And I think, I quite like solo Catwoman. They've proven time and again that she's a durable and versatile solo character. And see, they're putting her in charge of a corporation. Later on, and about a decade after this, they would have her become involved in the mafia and become a mafia don. They would, all sorts of things. Then she had a romance with Slam Bradley, which admittedly I'm underread on that period, but I could stand to go back and give that stuff another shot through. He's drawing her costume a little differently. She doesn't have the exposed hair here. She had the long early 90s teased hair early in the decade, and I guess she's covering her hair now. She used to have 2 shades of purple. She's down to 1 shade. Not that far from, where she'll be in terms of landing with, Darwin Cook and them with, the very sleek black cat suit that she wore. Which, to be fair, completely was one of the best reinventions in comic book history. I don't know if I quite saw it as seismic as it was at the time, because it was kind of controversial. People did not take to it immediately, at least a large portion of the fan base. But my goodness, in hindsight, it was a bellwether. It really was. And you don't get that unless you already start with a really popular and enduring version of the character that they got to do a 180 away from. And Jim Balent, his Catwoman was the Catwoman. He proved that she could be, him and the writers on this book, Joe Duffy, I think Chuck Dixon, and Devin Grace, and although there may be 1 or 2 I'm forgetting, they proved that she could be a solo character, and she's been a solo character ever since. And Impulse, issue 50. I don't think it made it too much longer than 50. People like that character. As the world moves on. I liked him. I don't think I did not buy up to issue 50. Superman the Odyssey. Huh. Well, I don't think I ever saw that one. Well, there she is. And if you're buying Catwoman, that's what you want. You want to see your girl. This Batman Book of the Dead thing. All right, Doug mentioned Barry Kitson. They've sold me on it. I just don't think I'll ever come across it. I don't think I've ever seen this reprinted. But Doug mentioned Barry Kitson, Batman with some Egypt stuff. Talking about the Bat God. Huh? Seems interesting. All right. How much time we got going? Oh, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. What do we got next? How about... Here's something interesting. Semper Fi, Tales of the Marine Corps. This is late 80s Marvel War Book. Late 80s Marvel War Book? Yeah, the NAM was a success. So they made the effort to try with a couple other war books over the period. And Tales of the Marine Corps Semper Fi was one of them. And the reason why you care about this book and you want to pluck this book out of any bin you find it in, I paid 50 cents for this comic, which is absolutely absurd since this was drawn by John Severin. Yes, John Severin. Cover by John Severin. Look at this. This is as good as anything John Severin ever did. Marvel, late 80s. No one's ever seen this. Michael Palladino writing, Phil Felix lettering, Pat Redding managing editor, Larry Hammett consulting editor. So this is South Vietnam. So hey, a whole book of John Severin drawn military stuff. And the Marvel, they made waves. Wow, this is such a, wow. I mean, it's John Severin. It's absolutely disgusting. We're watching an ambush. People are getting shot up, but they're using real blood. Real blood with the comics code. Well, because it's a real war story. I guess, the comics code always let them get away with a little bit more under the auspices of the war books that took themselves a little bit more seriously. You'll see it in Sergeant Rock as well. Because you think, like, yeah, that's a little bit more intense than they would, than you could get away with in Avengers at the time. But yeah, because this is actually, something purporting to at least be, relative to reality. Oh, wow. I'm talking to you. The NBA got me because you didn't come back. Why not? Ooh. So, oh man, this is just flawless, absolutely flawless. You're not going to get any better than John Severin, so you don't need to worry about trying. You know that everything looks like it should look. You know that the munitions of both the American and the Viet Cong soldiers are precise because John Severin didn't play around. My goodness. This, and I mean, this is actually really rough. This guy gets shot. He drops a grenade into a room. Oh man, look at this. It's just, this is a really heavy war comic, but this is for Marvel in 1988, December 1988. Marvel was publishing primo John Severin war material. Did you know that before now? Well, now you do. He did a fair amount of work for Marvel over the years. He did a Conan graphic novel not too long after this. He may have done more than one Conan graphic novel. Think about that. There's so much John Severin work that you have never read, that I have never read. For the rest of our lives, we can be discovering new John Severin to read. Isn't that just a joy? Because he never stopped working, not right up till the very end, and his work never stopped being good. He never really lost a step. Oof, intense stuff. I'm not even going to try figuring out what's going on here. This period, it's kind of a crapshoot whether you're going to be getting, what kind of depiction you're going to be getting, because more nuanced depictions and certainly more, less sentimental depictions were a staple of the mainstream at the time. Jesus, this is rough stuff. This is rough stuff. I'm just looking and thinking, like, this is the comics code. And this is just dead bodies lying everywhere. My goodness. I'm sure I was thinking I was doing an X-Men comic for the algorithm, and then I go talk about an absolutely awful war comic here. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Pick this, go, run, do not walk. Pick these up when you see them. If it never occurred to you that anything with that title would it be of interest, John Severin, drawing a regular newsprint Marvel comic. And if that's not enough, there's a backup by Sam Glanzman. Yes, they had John Severin and Sam Glanzman making a go for a newsstand-friendly war comics package in the late 80s. But, the NAM, it just stopped perfect. They took it off the newsstand, and it got weird. The people who were running the show didn't really believe in the book anymore after the editor changed. But they had some success with the NAM. They put the NAM on newsstands. They put the NAM out in magazine format, actually, black and white. So this is, Tarawa Atoll, the island of Betio. Probably not getting that right. 3 Days of Horror, A Lifetime of Memories. November 20 to the 23rd, 1943. So, Sam Glanzman, we're talking about the Pacific Theater War. Oh man, talking very, very accurate. And not just accurate, but authentic. Well, folks, I don't know what to tell you. He's one of the rudest creatures I've ever met. That's all there is to it. Aren't you just the rudest creature anyone's ever met? Yes, you are. Oh, yes, just love being rude. All right. Where were we? Oh, yes. So, man, the bodies are stacking on the beach. Oh, my God. Like, this is it. This is how this part of this war was. A charnel house. Bodies heaped up on the beach. My goodness. And here's an ad for Inferno. Maybe they could have left the ad until later in the comic. I don't know. Does it take something away from the somber mood? No, it's advertising for you. And there we go. They were up to the Tet Offensive by then. On sale July 30th from Marvel Comics. So yeah, they were feeling pretty good about the NAM as a book for the first couple years. It was improbably selling pretty well. And then they started tinkering with it. Okay, so there was a bullpen bulletin back here. Was that pretty much it? Yeah, this is, I mean, what is there to say? It's Sam Glanzman. It's some of the most, I mean, Sam Glanzman and John Severin. This costs 75 cents. You could buy this at a gas station. John Severin and Sam Glanzman. All right, so here's the bullpen bulletins. They were pushing Count Duckula #1, which, hey, I bought it. I bought Count Duckula. You know, Bill Sienkiewicz inked an issue of Count Duckula. Wolfpack Limited Series. I need to go back and pick that up. That's an interesting book from the period that's never really gotten any re-examination. Silver Surfer's up to 18. That's the tail end, I think, of Marshall Rogers' engagement. Either that or he's already left. But yeah, this is right in the middle of Inferno because Exterminators is up to issue 3. Marvel Comics Presents just started up. Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown, that would have been probably the big, quote-unquote event of the month. The launch of that book. They made a big deal out of that book. It's a very nice-looking book, don't get me wrong. They were putting G.I. Joe in magazine format alongside the NAM and Savage Sword of Conan, apparently. Or maybe that was the digest. I don't know. Oh, well. Mike Rockwitz. I remember liking some of the books that his name was on. He was the editor on Excalibur. He did Wolfpack. Alex Saviuk had a baby with his wife. Something or other, Chalk Talks. All right, so interesting Marvel comic. I'm almost certain you've never seen before because I never saw one before. I found it in a quarter box one time. All right, what's next? All right, let's look at an issue of Ghost. Yeah, from Comics Greatest World. Remember Comics Greatest World? I was not very invested in the Comics Greatest World. This was the one character out of this push that I really liked. And the reason why I really like this character is because they got Adam Hughes to draw her. The moment they stopped getting Adam Hughes to draw her, I stopped being interested in her. What are you doing? He's in the kitchen. And I know you're thinking to yourself, well, that's about the most predictable thing I could have ever imagined, Tegan. But, there you have it. I've already said Adam Hughes is simply beyond reproach for me, except for the fact that he was never very prolific. And nowadays his interiors are about as rare as hen's teeth. Oh, well, these credits are doing a number. All right, Eric Luke was writing. So we have a number of different pencilers. So he's already Adam Hughes. I think he did the first 2 issues solid, and we're already incorporating guest artists because we've got Adam Hughes penciling the first sequence with 3 different inkers: Hughes himself, Carl Story, and Jason Martin. There's another sequence with Casey Jones doing penciling, early work from Casey Jones. Think of him more as a 2000s guy. Paul Guinan does a sequence. Colleen Doran does a sequence. Tom Grummett does a sequence. So, an interesting array of excellent, top-rate artists. So here's first page, Adam Hughes, and there's our heroine Ghost. Her deal is that she's a ghost. She's dead, but it's kind of like Dead Man. She's a dead person who solves crime. She doesn't possess people. I don't think she has guns. She gets to have guns, like dead person guns. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I read these comic books. And I don't remember liking the character enough to keep going without Adam Hughes, but maybe if I see him at a quarter bin sometime. And so already we've changed up, and I guess this would be the early Casey Jones, which very different artist. Doing some sort of flashback here. Yeah, she was always having flashbacks to her real life, her previous life when she was alive, or being confused about something or other. I don't know. Is this the Paul Guinan? This is possibly the Paul Guinan. Oh, X Year One. See, that was the one that they pushed. This was the guy coming out of the canon with the comics greatest world that they really, I think, thought was going to make a push. And to be fair, he stuck around for a little while. He stuck around for a few years. But, yeah, how much affection is there for the guy? I remember this. Oh, is this Bill Morrison's signature? Interesting. I don't remember that at all. Tex Avery Screwball Squirrel. That looks like Bill Morrison's signature, if ever I saw it. I don't remember seeing that ever. All right. So is this... I don't even know who I'm looking at here. Is this Colleen Doran? Looks like it could be. Looks like it could be someone. Oh, we're switching between the sequences. Okay, I get it. Switching between these. That's why it's jumping around. That's Colleen Doran. She can do cheesecake stuff. She's a very talented woman. One of the most purely talented draftsmen, certainly who's working today. I want to say this would be the Casey Jones. We'll come back to the Dark Horse source. And here's your Tom Grummett. Oh, and the gimmick is they get Tom Grummett to draw some fantasy sequence where, it's like a more traditional superhero comic book. Because these were the differences, the small differences that people lived by at the time. And, Tom Grummett, nice, never turns in a bad-looking comic book. I bought a lot of comic books because Tom Grummett did them. And I think we're back to the Adam Hughes, because the drawing is, oh, man. He's just so good. He's just so good. And you talk to other artists, especially people who were working at the period. Oh, man, I've seen excellent top shelf artists say disparaging things about themselves, just in the context of Adam Hughes. It's he gave a whole generation a complex because he just understands everything about how it all should look. He knows how to make it read well. He knows how to do interesting design elements, really interesting design elements. His physiology, his drapery, his cloth. Just... And then next issue, I guess, Barbed Wire is coming to town. That's another of the character. And the reason that character got a push is because she's the one they made a movie out of with Pamela Anderson, which I still haven't seen. Maybe I'll catch it on cable one of these days. I need to get cable. Cable is much preferable to the alternative. Now that you look back and realize, oh yeah, I think cable was an easier system than how we're doing it now. That's a big 10-4 on that. Oh, they were doing Rogue Squadron comics this early. Dave Dorman. Rogue Squadron. Rogue Squadron was really popular. It's kind of amazing they haven't done any other ancillary media. They were talking about doing a movie about it for a while, I want to say. Really, really popular iteration of the story. Here's more of the comics' greatest world stuff, which, they got Keith Giffen to work on some of it, which, Keith Giffen liked paychecks like any other human being. He'd be the first one to tell you. All right, so where was that? Dark Horse Source, the information network for Dark Horse heroes. So, they were bringing the Predator in for their line of heroes. He was going to hunt him for a while, and that was a big thing. They got a letter from a reader. Oh, someone's happy Motorhead's getting his own series. I don't remember which one Motorhead is. Hero Zero is fighting Godzilla. Oh, see, they did a lot. I guess we just dismissed them out of hand. But they really did put out a fair amount. And see, Accent had a respectable creative team. Stephen Grant, Javier Saltares, Andrew Papoy. Those are solid names. You don't call up Stephen Grant if you want a poor comic book. The man knows how to write comic books. Javier Saltares, very good artist. Got Keith Giffen. And Adam Hughes. It wasn't just no one. The Mask. Was The Mask part of the... See, he's being sold with the Dark Horse heroes, but was it established that he was? The Mask was one of the Dark Horse heroes, guys? I don't know. News to me. There's a character. He came out with that movie. People loved it. And man, that was, I think, the peak for The Mask. You think, that'd be an idea that would stick around. No, not really. Of course, someone needs to come out with a really killer run on The Mask. It's a character ripe for reinterpretation. All right, so ends. I want to say this may have been the last of Dark Horse's comics, greatest world books that I bothered with. Yeah, what can I say? Do we have a few minutes? We still have a few minutes. We've looked at a few comic books. We have. Well, we pandered, so let's finish with a Donald Duck. Yes. I really did buy Disney comics quite religiously going back. I really like these characters. I will always come out for Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge. I will always come out for my boys. And there's no Donald Duck comic book on the stands in America right now, and it still bugs me. It still bugs me so much. So much. So, you get a Carl Barks. I'll send you off with a smile on your face, because this isn't just any Carl Barks. This is Carl Barks of the Donald Duck 10-pagers. Now, Carl Barks didn't draw a bad comic. Just didn't do it. It wasn't in him. But if you want to talk about the best Carl Barks, it was probably the Donald Duck 10 pages. The earlier, the better. This is... We're almost done. I'm on my last book. Anyway, you can tell it's towards the end here because the lettering is stiff, but it's still... Oh, and Gyro Gear Loose and some of Uncle Scrooge's... some of the space of the Uncle Scrooge stories invades the Donald Duck universe. But just look. Prime time. Absolutely flawless. Flawless. He's doing something or other. He ends up turning the aqueduct pink. Pink's coming out. Everyone's saying, oh, the guy's pink in his shower. Uh-oh. Donald Duck did something wrong. That's actually the premise of a surprisingly large amount of fiction. Donald Duck did something wrong. Okay, so he turned all the water pink. So it's something he did by accident. Good old gyro. Oh, and Daisy. Yeah, Carl Barks didn't do a lot of Daisy stuff. I don't think he had a particular feel for the character. And I can definitely understand why. I mean, Daisy Duck. I am a duck aficionado, and I have nothing good to say about Daisy Duck. So he's dying the water again. So you get to see the repeat of the pig guy, only he's dyed white this time. Sure snowballed, didn't it? See, that is how Carl Barks will end a story. Someone will just look at the can and go, wow, that sure got out of hand quickly. Oh, and this is around the same time where they started taking some of the books, what are you doing? Oh, come on. Gladstone started taking the books off of the newsstand, or at least newsstand pricing, and a couple of them became like $5.99 square bound, and I kind of had to tap out because $5.99, wow, that was way too much to pay for a periodical comic book, for a monthly comic book in the late 90s. All right, so we turn the page here. Man, we are done. Let's just flip through here because this guy's going to tear the house apart. Here's some Al Taliaferro strips. See, that's what I loved. And I was the dork sitting around in high school getting jazzed about the Al Taliaferro in the Donald Duck. That was me. That's why I am the way I am today. Oh, and they put in these historical features. So we're talking about Minnie Mouse took on the role of Hollywood Chatterbox in a monthly feature that ran for 2.5 years in Walt Disney's Comics and Stories. Interesting. There's an ad. You never would have found an ad in the early Gladstone. So more of these Taliaferro strips. I really do hope that Fantagraphics is getting around. Come on. He is insisting that I go pay attention to him. I just like the Ducks. You probably guessed that. You probably guessed that I'm a fan of the Ducks. Oh, man. So they were still putting this material in front of kids as late as the late 90s. And it works. There's no reason at all why you can't put this in front of a kid today. It's old-timey. All cartoons are always in old-timey stuff. Still reads perfect. The jokes are, it's just straight humor. Him getting frustrated with the clock, so he ties a iron to the hand, to the clock hand. What are you doing? We're talking about Donald Duck, boy. I'll be done in like 2 minutes. My goodness. Donald's fun in a winter wonderland. All sorts of hijinks with sleds. All right. And we're down to I don't see any names that stick out. But yeah, if I was getting a Carl Barks 10-pager, an Al Taliaferro, that's a good comic book. That right there is a good use of your $1.95. And there was a time where you could just buy that at the grocery store. Admittedly, from 1999, I think that was. What was this year? This was, 95. Oh, okay. Still, 95, you're getting really towards the twilight of the era when you could buy this at the supermarket, but you still could. So, all right, we got through a few more books this time around. We got through some books of substance. We got through a variety. And we got through some Spawn and X-Men for the algorithm. So, if you like the show, stick around, watch all the other stuff I got up on the channel. Check out my Patreon. I got a free tier. I got a free download right now with the free tier. 20,000 words of my music writing available for you to download. All you gotta do is subscribe to the free tier, which is where I'll send out any future newsletter mailings. What else? I got a new article up at the tcg.com on Batman Year One. Go check it out. I'm really proud of it. Put a lot of work into it. Check out my podcast with Claire Napier, Udder Madness. We talk about Top Cow Comics, Mark Silvestri, Michael Turner, Cyberforce, all that good stuff. We're on YouTube. I just put up a new video, annotated video of us talking about the darkness, but we're also on Patreon, we're on Spotify, we're on SoundCloud. I got daily comic book reviews that go up on TikTok and Instagram. On both, they're the same reviews. I look at a different comic every day, and you can see compilations of older videos here on this YouTube site as well. So please, give a thought to my Patreon. That's how you make your appreciation for the show known. Tell all your friends. Share the links. That's important. And just have a wonderful day. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Be kind to small children and animals. And just have a good day.